Dave Sloan, you are the executive director of our newly established St. John Paul II Legacy Foundation. We will get to that, but you have one of the most compelling conversion stories that I have ever heard. You and I have known each other a good while, so I've heard aspects of the story, but I'm hoping to get more of the details if you're willing to share. So in introducing yourself, share also why you're interested in John Paul II's theology of the body, why you're interested in being the director of a foundation that has the mission to raise the funds to spread this message around the world. For us to get to that point, we have to know about you. Tell us about your encounter with Christ and how it came to be that you're giving your life to this mission.
Well, it is quite a tale.
I know.
Sometimes I feel like I have to apologize to people because my story has so much melodrama, such enormous highs and enormous lows. But recently we had our first board meeting for the St. John Paul II Legacy Foundation, and there were some board members whom I did not know yet.
Yeah.
So I needed to introduce myself to those folks, and the way I did that is maybe the way I'll start now, is my background for Zoom is I have a big screen TV. I didn't have a TV for 38 years until recently. Probably won't get into why I got the TV, but it had to do with having cuddle time with my wife in the evening after we put the kids to bed. So I got this 75-inch TV, and I put a cropped image of Rembrandt's Prodigal Son on the screen as my background for Zoom. So I have that right there behind me. And as we were going around the room introducing ourselves to each other, I realized I needed to give my qualifications for being executive director, chief cook, and bottle washer for the St. John Paul II Legacy Foundation. So just to my right behind me was the image of the prodigal son. And I explained to the group of esteemed board members that my qualification is that I'm that man on his knees who has crawled home to his father. And I have the father's arms around me, and my shoes are falling off my feet. And I have made it home. And that's who I am. I'm that one who crawled, and it was not a pretty journey, but I found my way home to my father. And being here today with you and with Juan and with everyone on the team upstairs, Hannah and little baby Amelia. We have little baby Amelia at work upstairs, 8 weeks old, with her mom, and we have the retreat center next door where I'm staying. And this is what it means to have come home to the Father. And it's been quite a journey, but like I mentioned a little while ago, Tolstoy said, "Don't be misled by the way you see me stumbling down the road. It's the right road that I'm stumbling down."
We're all stumbling down it. I love this image for you of the prodigal son returning. And I'm gonna approach it from this angle. It was his hunger that caused him to leave the father's house because he didn't believe his father would satisfy that hunger. But it was that same hunger, having tried everything in the world and still not been able to satisfy that hunger. It was the same hunger that brought him back to the father's house. So what was the hunger that led you away from the Father's house? Where did it lead you? And how did you get to the point of saying, I must return to my Father?
Well, a lot of times the brokenness in our lives is so extreme and so personal that there's a lot of it that we can't tell,
Right.
particularly when it comes to others that we're close to.
Correct.
So I was raised in a very broken family by people who were raised in very broken families. And there was no God, there was no religion, there was no understanding of any of those fundamentals of what makes a person a person.
When were you baptized?
My mom sneaked me away. My mom's family was very Catholic, and so she had stopped attending church, but she got pregnant with me. She and my dad are dead now, so I can till they got married because she was pregnant with me. And then after I was born, she sneaked me off and had me baptized against my father's wishes.
You were born in 62.
62. Yeah, and so her parents told her family told her that I would be in limbo if I died without being baptized. So she sneaked me out and had me baptized. That's the only time I was in a Catholic church until after I was confirmed.
Wow. And you were confirmed at what age?
I was confirmed at age 30.
30.
So we'll get there.
All right. So snuck away by your mom.
Right.
Wanted you to be baptized. Thank God she wanted you to be baptized.
She was at least, browbeaten into it by her family. Her sister was a nun. Her family was...
Okay, so these are details I don't know.
These were the kind of folks that were at church all the time. But I can't get into the brokenness of those lives because that's not my story.
That's not your story, sure.
To tell.
Sure.
So there was plenty of brokenness and plenty of pain. And so I was raised, my mom and dad were very broken, very lonely, very depressed people. And the one thing I do want to give them a lot of credit for is they taught me to love and serve the least ones, to love and serve the poor, to love and serve whoever's left out, whoever's excluded.
Give us a window. Like what do you remember from childhood where your parents were teaching you those lessons?
When I was 6, my mom told me about a boy in our apartment complex. We lived in these...
and where are you being raised?
So this was in Athens, Georgia, government housing, subsidized housing, the only white family living there, all these black kids, and one of them had sickle cell anemia and was dying. And so my mom told me about that and helped me figure out that I wanted to give him my favorite toys.
Oh my gosh.
So we went to his home to give him my favorite toys. Those are the things my mother taught me, and my father taught me the same
Like
things.
you went out and bought the favorite toys, or you were giving your personal favorite?
Yes.
Wow.
So we did that, and my dad taught me the same kind of things. Both of my parents, that's something they had in common, is they taught me that the most important person in the building is whoever cleans the bathrooms. That's the most important person there, not the person in the corner executive suite.
Right.
So I carried that through life with me.
Well, this is fascinating for me because in knowing you, Dave, I've always seen that preferential option you have for the poor. And to hear that this was something instilled by your own parents who maybe in their own spiritual, emotional poverty had a certain sensitivity for the poor.
They did. They both did.
It's beautiful that they passed that on to you.
They had it strongly, and I got it early. And I could give a lot of examples, but I just did get that. And the other thing they both gave me was a tremendous love for learning, for literature. So I would stay up at night under my blanket with a flashlight reading. And from literature, one learns the logos. One learns the fabric of the universe, the way God put it together, the way he put us together. And I learned that I wanted to become a good man, and I wanted to become a heroic man. And I was unable to do that. I failed horribly, as one will fail if all he has is great literature. That's not enough.
Right. But what was some of the literature that spoke to you? Because these are, as I learned from Bishop Barron, and I think he got it from Thomas Aquinas, seeds of the word, right?
Yes,
These are seeds of the word. You were entering into good literature. What were some stories that really spoke to you?
Now, actual literature that we would consider literature would be a little bit later in the story. So I'll back up just a little bit before that with a couple things. One is I used to get up early in the morning. We lived in Athens, Georgia, and I would watch these TV shows with these Southern gospel quartets singing gospel. And somehow I didn't know nothing about God. We didn't talk about God. I knew those guys were onto something. And then they would have these evangelists, these preachers on these shows. And they had hair that was slick. And you could pour hot coffee on their top over. It wouldn't reach their head. It wouldn't get to their scalp, right? But those guys were onto something.
Yeah.
And I knew they were. And I would get up early while the rest of my family was still sleeping.
Of your own initiative.
Sit right in front of the TV.
Fascinating.
And I would watch these gospel preachers.
Fascinating.
And listen to these televangelists. And then the next thing that came along was Chris Christopherson. My parents turned me on to Chris Christopherson, and I've told both of them that they ruined my life with Chris Christopherson. So that silver-tongued devil's got nothing to lose. I'll only live till I die. We take our own chances, pay our own dues, the silver-tongued devil and I. So Chris Christopherson became somewhat, gospel in our home. And
Thank you, God, for good music that can speak to our hearts, cut through all the crap, and get right down to where stuff is happening inside.
so,
Can I paint a picture for our viewers that I know where this story goes? Like you have, as a young boy, this is news to me. I didn't know this about your parents instilling in you this love for the poor. But you yourself would find yourself homeless and utterly poor, not just spiritual poverty, but you know this firsthand.
yes.
Take me from how a childhood that, you spoke of your own parents' brokenness, but they passed on this love for the poor. You're speaking of how literature spoke to you. You're speaking of how music spoke to you. These are seeds that are getting planted in your life at an early age. Take us from that earlier age where we have those seeds and you find yourself homeless.
So it's not that fancy or complicated of a story. It's a lot of brokenness at home. And
Did you run away from home as a teenager?
my mom was an alcoholic. My dad was terribly depressed. They split when I was 12. Our home life was very, my parents weren't really available for parenting.
Siblings? You have siblings?
I have two younger sisters.
And are they still alive?
Yeah, they're doing remarkably well considering.
Yeah, yeah.
I think of my parents as being two lifeboats that sort of moored together for a while, cut the cords, drifted apart, and I think of them both as they were sinking in their lifeboats, as their lifeboats were not seaworthy, as them offloading onto mine and my sister's rafts more than they actually had on their own boats in some miraculous way. They gave us more than they had.
Right.
And it was enough. It was barely enough.
Yeah.
It was nip and tuck.
Yeah.
But they gave us what we needed to find a way in this world. But that was only after a lot of lostness, and in my case was more extreme than my sister's. So I got into my mom's booze when I was about 15, and I remember crawling around on the floor the first time I got into it, thinking, I found it. I found it. Now I know. Now I know where to go. Now I know what the answer is. Now I know how to be a person, how to survive, how to make it in this world. Now I know where my mom's scotch is. Everything's going to be okay now.
Wow. And
First time I drank it.
was this the sense of there is a relief for the pain that I'm in? Is that what it was?
Well, it's a relief, but it's also there's something transcendent there in spirits.
Yeah, we call it spirits, right?
There is something transcendent. So there was an experience of the transcendence, and there was a balm for the pain. And then on the heels of that came the drugs. So I'm an extremist. I've always been an extremist. And so I got into the drugs, into the booze, and I was hanging around those people that do the drugs and the booze. And those guys don't treat women properly. So I didn't set out to be an exploiter. I wanted to be the good guy, but I did not know how. And I was drunk, drugged, and surrounded by people who also did not know how to be the good guy.
Yes.
So the shame of that behavior, when I knew in my heart from the Logos, I had read a lot of literature. I think
Say more what you mean by the Logos, because some viewers might not know what you
just
mean
the
there.
truth of who a person is, what the world is made of, how it is to be a person in the world. These things are revealed in life, in nature, in art, in literature. All good art comes from that place.
Yes, from that place of the logic behind things. That's where we get Logos, the logic,
Right.
Logos, the purpose behind it, the meaning, the deeper essence of a thing.
And it's more than just the logic. It is that deeper essence. And I like to say that every story truly told is the story of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus
Amen.
Christ.
Yes, it is.
So as I read literature, I encountered the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, but I didn't understand that sufficiently, nor do I know that anyone really does, to make it on my own.
Yeah.
I didn't have people to show me how to live that Logos I was finding in literature. So I fell into this behavior toward women, and I knew from my literature, I was starting to tell you earlier when I was in second or third grade, my teacher called my mom in and said she needed to stop me from reading because I was going to read all the books in the library. There'd be nothing left for me to read. So I read compulsively. I loved what I read. And I'm a compulsive person.
So you were absorbing the word.
Yes.
And that would lead you, and this is just how it works, absorbing the word would lead you to the word with a capital W.
That's right.
And I'm going to say something else here, and we're back to the prodigal son and the idea that the very hunger that caused him to leave the father's house is the hunger that brings him back. Booze and sex were two of the idols in your life.
Yes.
And, there are entire Christian denominations that are known for their alcohol and sex is of the devil, right? And that is not the way Catholics see the world. We see something good that's gotten twisted up. And I often quote St. Augustine here and this is at least attributed to him and comes from his whole ethos, the way he saw the world, that those who are lost in their passions, and you were lost in your passions at this stage of your life, those who are lost in their passions are less lost than those who have lost their passions.
That's right.
And I think, again, of the prodigal son story, the older brother who'd followed all the rules of his father his whole life, we know that he was not in touch with his passions. The younger brother is in touch with his passions. Those passions get him in a hell of a lot of trouble. We know that. Your passions got you in a hell of a lot of trouble, as we're learning. My passions got me in a hell of a lot of trouble. But the reason the one who is lost in his passions is less lost than those who have lost their passions is because that passion is ultimately for the living God. It's a passion for the home and love of the Father. And that very hunger that caused him to leave brought him back, and he entered the celebration. Whereas the older brother who followed all the rules, we know his passions were numbed or dulled because he refused to go into the celebration. He refused to go into the feast. Christianity is for hungry people, and you were a hungry young man. You're taking those hungers to the wrong places. But looping it back to what I was saying earlier, Catholicism is not a denomination that will blame the good things of God for our abuse of them. Right? We will find in the abuse of alcohol, we will find the invitation to untwist that, and it's going to bring you to the altar where there's alcohol, right? Rightly offered to God and rightly entered into as a celebration. It'll bring you to the sacrament of marriage. The twisting of sex, untwist it, it will bring you to the sacrament of marriage. This is, you're in the phase, though, of your life at this stage of the journey where your passions are misdirected, and so you're pursuing a satisfaction of them that is disordered and leads you where?
So it led me into a tremendous amount of shame, and I fell in love. You know, a lot of times you'll see me doing something good. People see me doing some good things, and I like for people to know why. I do these good things oftentimes explicitly, sometimes less clearly, but sometimes very explicitly, because of the harm that I've done to others that cannot be corrected, that I cannot go back and undo. So what can I do? I can go do something good for someone. I can't go back to that young woman whose heart I broke.
Yeah.
And I think of the look in her eyes when she found out that I had betrayed her and what happened in her that I watched happen. And I love this girl to the best of my ability, and my ability was poor.
Right.
It was the best I had to give, and it was poor. It was not good enough.
Right.
It was tremendously harmful. And I tell you this because I've been selfish, and I've been careless, and I've been hurtful many times in my life. And I'm giving you this one example.
Yeah.
But for her, this one that struck me so deeply with so much shame that I spiraled down into shame, deeper and deeper and deeper into shame, and wound up living under bridges, having cat holes that I slept in. I had blankets where I slept in the press box of the stadium where I'd gone to high school.
Wow.
And that shame did that to me, the shame over what I had done to her.
Wow.
And that doesn't go away now. It doesn't go away. It's not undone.
Right.
That harm was done. It's still done.
Right.
Yet I can turn around today and I can go do something good for somebody. So sometimes people see me doing something good for somebody, and I worry they might have the wrong idea about who I am. I'm the guy that did that harm and now has an opportunity to try to do something to make amends,
Yeah.
to try to make something better for someone else, since I can't, in many cases, make it better for the one who was harmed.
Brother, I can so relate to that. I remember an experience I had some years ago where I was given a kind of insight into the pain that my sexual choices had caused others when I was younger. And the pain that I saw that I had caused others was so raw. And we are, in as much as we're able, we are called to make amends for our wrong choices. And I found myself almost frantically like, what can I do? I can't. It wouldn't be appropriate to look up these people all these years later and, go back particularly and specifically into those old relationships and try to make amends, right? Sometimes you can't do that. It's not appropriate. But I was struck with the depth of the pain I had caused and confronted with how could I possibly make amends? And I started having like this little reel of film unfold in my head. Like, I mean, the only thing I could think to possibly I could do that would even begin to touch and make amends for what I had done to hurt, in the way I hurt that woman and that woman and that woman. Maybe I could give my life to helping other people, to understand God's beautiful, glorious plan for sexuality. Maybe I could do that. And I was like, then I woke up, well, that's what I've been doing for the last 12 or whatever years it was at that time in my life. And I had a kind of funny, the Lord has already, in his graciousness to me, given me the path of my reparation. And I'm hearing that same thing in your story. Like, in God's graciousness, he has given you already a path of reparation.
Yes. And I'd like to say something, since I'm talking a lot about me, I'd like to say something about you. Because there's a reason why we're sitting here at this table together.
Yes.
There's a reason why we're on this mission together.
Yes.
People think of you as the chastity guy, whether they use chastity or some other term. Well, you're also the charity guy. And a lot of times it's not as obvious how you live that. But I've been around you enough. From the first day I met you, when the event was over, this was more than 20 years ago, you didn't leave. You stood there by that stage, and there were a long line of people that wanted to talk with you. And you stood, and you shared, and you listened, and you talked, and you gave, and gave, and gave. And I've watched you pour out your life in charity. And you've never said this to me, but I know what you're doing. I know what you're up to. You're giving all that you have to give. I've watched you do this over and over again. You simply give all of Christopher that there is to give. And that is an act of charity, that you are not only teaching chastity, but you're spilling out your life in charity. We were in Mexico a few months ago. This is more than 20 years after the first time I saw you do this. 4 days, you're talking on the stage. On the breaks, you're sitting on the edge of the stage, and people are lined up to come to you and bring you their hearts, bring you their hopes, bring you their brokenness, and you're giving. You're pouring out, you're pouring out, you're pouring. You have a 10, 15-minute break in an all-day long schedule, and you're pouring out yourself to these people, to the next person, to the next person, to the next person, to the next person. That evening when all that's done at dinner, sharing with the next person, the next person, the next person. When you have to be on a plane at 5 o'clock the next morning and you have to get up at 3 to go to the airport and you won't go home and go to bed because there's another person and another person and you're pouring out your life. And I'll watch you do this.
Thank you, brother, for just seeing me there. And I do feel a woe to me if I do not share as much as I am able what I have been given. And to whom much is given, much is required, much is expected. And I don't do it out of a sense of duty. I do it out of a sense of wanting to connect eyes with one more person and hear that person's story and speak whatever words of encouragement or hope I possibly can in those little exchanges. They keep me human. If I spend all my ministry on a stage, you end up being removed from the people who are in front of you. It helps me to remain grounded, to come off that stage and have those interactions. It keeps me human, and I feel seen by you. So thank you for seeing me there. I give the glory to the Lord, and I ask the Lord to give me the strength to continue on. And I think sometimes of that scene in Schindler's List, where at the end of his life or all those years of serving and saving as many lives as he possibly could, he looks at his ring and he's like, maybe I could have sold that and saved a few more lives. Maybe I could have done a little more. And all these people are thanking him for what he's done. And he's thinking, there's more I could have done. What more could I have done? I find myself in that situation oftentimes. And I know the Lord knows our human limitations, right? And I know the Lord himself would say to his own disciples, come away and let's rest for a while, because we've been among the people all day and we didn't even have a chance to eat. I know what that's like. You know what that's like. We do have to pay attention to our own human needs and have those times of rest. But there's also a time I'm going to give it all I got. I'm going to pour myself out. I'm going to lay it out. And those are incredibly rewarding exchanges when you're eye to eye and you're hearing one person's story right in front of you, one person's pain right in front of you. Those encounters keep me doing this work.
And there's a sense of God's presence.
Yes.
Because I know what's happening here. If I'm helping somebody, I know what's really going on.
Yes.
God is coming through me, and he's willing to come through me. He's choosing to come through me. And there's a tremendous grace in that knowledge that he's present, he's participating, and he's revealing his power.
Can I loop back to your story?
Please.
So you are sinking in shame in seeing the pain that your own dysfunctional, sinful humanity is causing someone you claim to love. Mm-hmm. Been there. You find yourself sinking deeper and deeper into that shame to the point that you're on the streets. You have nowhere to sleep. Take us from, I'm a homeless man, an alcoholic homeless man. You're sitting with me right now in a studio. You could still be on the street. You could be dead.
My friends didn't make it. They're not here. What happened in your life that led you here from the streets? One of those friends got sober. I was curled up in a ball one morning, Cheshire Bridge Road, Midtown Atlanta, in the woods off the road. The sun was coming up through the bare trees. It was winter. I was laying on top of some doormats I'd stolen from some apartments, and I had some other doormats on top of me. I was curled up in a ball with my head in my hands, trembling. And I said this almost like a prayer. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know anything about God. And I started saying, help me, help me. I didn't know who I was saying help me to. Help me, help me. There's something positive in that.
Absolutely. There's hope
There's
there.
a claim that there could be hope.
Yes.
There could be help. And I had the sense that there was a light inside of me and that it was going out and that it was going to be too late to help me. There wouldn't be any light left to help. Help me, help me. I had one friend left. His name was Jimmy. Jimmy got sober. One person who knew where to find me in those woods and weeds. And he got sober. And he started taking me to 12-step meetings.
Thank you, God, for Jimmy. Thank you, God, for Jimmy.
Thank you, God, for Jimmy. He wasn't able to stay sober. And he's in a bad spot now. But he started taking me to those meetings, and
was there resistance in you? Like, 12, so I'm not going to that. Or was there I'm jumping up and going?
At that point in time, I was punching brick walls. I have damage to my wrist and hands now. Punch glass, you can see the scars. I was completely shattered, emotionally shattered. My friend wanted to take me someplace. It was warm inside.
Yeah.
The coffee was free. The people didn't want anything from me. They weren't afraid of me. And the people were cool. You could tell. These were cool people. We tried to go to church one morning when we'd been up all night. Jimmy and I, we'd been up wandering all night downtown Atlanta. Sunday morning, we tried to go into a church just because it was there and people were going in. They stopped us and wouldn't let us in. You could tell that there was something wrong with us. Well, these people in this 12-step group, they wanted us there.
Can I tell you what I was thinking as you were describing that? Before you made this comment about trying to get into the church, you were describing that you were received. They didn't want anything from you, and you felt welcome there.
Yes.
My immediate thought was, you wouldn't get that at the typical church. Tragically, the very people who are supposed to be representing Christ on this planet would probably turn you away at the door. And then you just told me the story that's exactly what happened to you.
So I started going to these 12-step meetings. Jimmy was taking me. There was this guy there named Big John. And Big John would hug me. And then he'd hold me by my upper arms. He'd hold me out in front of him, and he'd look at me and shake me and laugh. And then he'd say, "You better be here tomorrow now. Don't you go die on me now. Don't you go die on me." And he'd laugh and hug me again, pick me up, and he'd say, "I want to see you here tomorrow now.
Thank you.
I want to see you here tomorrow."
Wow. As soon as you said Big John, I was like, I'm going to love this guy.
I wanted to be alive the next day for Big John.
Thank you, God.
And I still didn't know how to stay sober.
Yeah.
I was my brain was scrambled.
Yeah.
But eventually one day, I was standing in front of the board with the 12 steps on it. It was illuminated from behind. I was high. And after the meeting was over, I was reading the 11th step, and Rusty J came up to me, and Rusty said, "What you doing, boy?" He's a Marine Corps captain, Rusty. "What you doing, boy?" "Well, I'm reading the 11th step." "What you doing that for, boy?" Talks about knowledge and power, and that's what I need. "Boy, you don't need knowledge and power. You're out of your mind, boy." So do you think you could come back here tomorrow night sober, one day sober? You think you could do that? I said, "I don't know." He said, "I want you to do that. I want you to try. I want you to be here tomorrow night at 8 o'clock with one day sober. See if you can do that." I said, "All right." He said, "Meanwhile, you can try the first half of the first step. You can't do it, but it won't hurt you to try." So somebody had given me a bicycle, somebody from the 12-step group, and my dad had started letting me sleep on his couch again. And I started trying to do that first half of that first step while I was riding that bike. I was riding it down Claremont Road, past the little airport there, watching the planes on a cold winter night, going up into the sky, watching the lights. And I was saying, because the first step says, I am powerless over whatever this issue is. And being anonymous, we just keep that piece anonymous.
Yeah.
I am powerless, but I was fairly psychotic at the time. So it was, I was powerless, we am powerless, I were powerless. I was just very confused. I couldn't figure out how to even say the first half of the first step. And finally, I settled on 3 words. I am powerless. And I started repeating them like a mantra.
Wow.
I am powerless. I am powerless. I am powerless. And I figured out that if I would keep repeating those 3 words, I wouldn't think any bad things.
Wow.
I wouldn't come up with a bad idea.
Wow.
Christopher, I was capable of coming up with bad ideas at that point in time.
Yeah.
We're not getting into a lot of those bad ideas.
Yeah.
I had some bad ideas.
Yeah. Yeah.
and I knew where to steal things, and
Yeah.
I knew where to get in trouble.
Yeah.
I am powerless. I am powerless.
Wow.
I am powerless. I said it thousands of times.
Wow.
I am powerless. I am powerless. I am powerless. And I stayed sober ever since then. Yesterday was 39 years.
Brother.
I made it back there the next night. There was Rusty J. And I had a day sober.
Wow.
And I thought, you know what? This I am powerless thing seems to be working, so I'll keep doing it.
Wow.
So I kept doing it. I kept repeating the mantra, I am powerless, I am powerless, I am powerless, riding my bicycle back and forth to those meetings. And after about 28 days of that, it occurred to me, I'm just riding down that Claremont Road past that Peachtree DeKalb Airport, airplanes up in the sky, cold night, starting to feel better, starting to feel stronger. I got 28 days sober, and I'm pedaling this bicycle. And I used to be an athlete.
Yeah.
This is starting to feel pretty good.
Yeah.
I am powerless. I am powerless. I'm standing up in the pedals, pedaling up this hill, looking at the plains. I'm powerless. I'm powerless. I'm powerless. And I'm sober. Maybe there's a power. Maybe there's a power in this universe that is for me. The power's for me.
I was going to ask you, you already went there. I was going to ask you, why do you think that I am powerless was so powerful? But you just put it right there. And as I hear those words, I am powerless, I hear the undoing of the original sin.
Yes.
Because the original sin is, I want to make myself like God, right? And I am powerless is the admission, I'm not God. My trying to make myself God did not work. But if I'm not God, but I exist, which I'm pretty sure I do, if I'm not powerful, if I'm powerless, maybe there is a power. Mm-hmm. And what's the step in AA where you say, there's a power greater than me, and I
came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity.
Boom. There it is. You were living it. You had a lived experience of that.
Yes. So really all I've been doing ever since is living that I am powerless bicycle prayer. I started out the story today talking about the prodigal son and calling back to his father. That's been the story for me for 39 years. But there's one thing I learned in those meetings that I want to share before we move on.
Yeah.
I've been to more than 10,000 of those meetings. I went to 3 meetings, 4 meetings, 5 meetings a day for the first few years.
Wow.
I was all in. And people would say, why are you hiding out in these 12-step meetings? Why don't you go get a life? You're sober now. I'm like, well, I may look like I'm okay. Don't let that fool you.
Yeah.
I'm not. I need help. I'm going to the next meeting. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So I learned something in those thousands of meetings that everybody, I think, can benefit from. And I've had many people come up to me over the years and tell me that hearing me share this changed their life. So this is something, if anybody wants to grab a pen, grab something to write on, this is something that will change your life that I learned in these thousands of 12-step meetings. Find the people that are doing the good thing, the thing that speaks to the core of what your life is about. And then come often, come early, stay late, and find a way to serve. Showing up sometimes won't do it. Going to Mass sometimes won't do it.
Yeah.
It won't change. You may have some miracle.
Yeah.
But normatively, you want to change your life? Find the people who are doing the good thing, the thing that is at the core of what your life is about. Come often, come early, stay late, and find a way to serve.
I love it.
Come often, come early, stay late, and find a way to serve. So that has stood me in good stead. You can apply that principle at church.
Yeah,
You can
absolutely.
apply that principle to religion.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, if you have a conversion a little later and you know that principle, you're ready.
Wow.
You're
Wow.
good to go.
So a lot of people will find sobriety in AA and not find Catholicism. You found sobriety in AA, which was the beginning of, I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is that moment of, I am powerless, I am powerless, I am powerless. Maybe there is a power. This is the beginning of an encounter with the living God, who never left you, was with you in all you experienced, but you didn't know it. You're beginning to know that this living God is with you. How does that lead you? How does your experience in AA lead you to the Catholic faith?
I think, and this isn't to judge anybody who goes through 12-step recovery and doesn't become Catholic,
Right.
but I think if you stay on the beam and on the path and push it hard, you wind up Catholic.
Yeah,
That's just where it goes.
Yeah.
If you keep pushing, keep pressing, that's where it takes you. So I've had two people lately, and you could say two or three people lately who've asked me to give them some resources about Catholicism, to help them learn about Catholicism. And I gave them a book called Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers about the founding of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you follow that book, Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers, by golly, you're going to wind up where I wound up. It's going to take you there. Dr. Bob is the best example of Catholicism in action. He wasn't Catholic, but he had a lot of help from a nun named Sister Ignatia.
Wow. And
that program will lead you here. And it certainly did for me. It didn't happen as a straight line.
Yeah.
It was whoosh. So I got sober, went to a bunch of meetings.
How old are you when you get sober?
23.
Okay. And that is, help me with my math, that's 1995?
So that's 85.
I'm sorry, I'm doing a decade wrong. 1985. 1985, you're 23, you become sober.
Get sober, go to thousands of meetings, become semi-functional, and started going to college. A friend of mine in recovery took me down to Georgia State University and said, Dave, I'm going to pay your application fee here. You should be in school. It's crazy not to be in school if you're drunk, getting sober. So, gosh, I loved it. Wow. Immediately, I was like, oh, I'm a duck and I found the pond. Like, I can do this. Like, I love this stuff. Like, I don't want to leave when class is over. I want to talk to the professor. This is great stuff. And then a year later, I was on scholarship at Emory. And not too much later after that, I was living with my fiance in campus housing. And not too long after that, she decided, we had a wedding planned. She decided not to marry me. And I was so heartbroken, just deeply broken. And I felt like I'm not one of these people that hears God talking. Felt like I heard God talking. Went to California to be with some friends while she moved out of our apartment. And while I was there, I felt God say, go back to the Catholic Center at Emory University. I want you to go there. And I had only been there with a co-ed a couple years before to get some information about a mission trip that she could pretend she was going on while she was spending spring break with me. So she could trick her parents into thinking she was.
Wow.
So I went there. That's the only way I knew about the Catholic Center. I knew nothing about Catholicism. I felt like God said, go to the Catholic Center, and gave me some peace. And I was torn up over this broken engagement. We had a wedding planned. The Azalea Gardens. It was beautiful. I was finally going to have some sanity after all this craziness with relationships and all of this. So she's gone. I'm heartbroken. God says, go to the Catholic Center. And I showed up at the Catholic Center and met this theologian there named Tim Muldoon, told him my story, and I said, can y'all do anything with that here? Do y'all deal with that situation here? And he just laughed, and he said, you're in the right place, Dave. You're in the right place.
And that was the beginning of going to Mass again? Did you start going to Mass? What?
Well, it wasn't going again. I'd never been.
Right. Well, right. No, it wasn't again. That's exactly right. Right.
Yeah, I had never been. They started a little formation program for me, and I just took to it like a duck to water. I loved it. I loved the scripture. I loved the catechism.
And you just jumped in.
Well, I'd been to thousands of AA meetings.
Yeah.
And I read all of the AA history, all the ancillary material, all the peripheral material. So I had all that formation, and I was ready. And I read the Bible, and I said, well, looks like God wrote this. I read the catechism and said, looks like the same guy wrote this one. And I know something about literature. I recognize authorship.
Yeah,
I read the catechism, I recognize, I know who wrote this. Same guy that wrote this other book over here, my Bible, wrote this one. And so I became Catholic my senior year at Emory, just before graduation.
Wow. What year was that?
So that was 1993.
And the catechism had just come out?
Yeah.
So take us from, we go from AA to Catholicism. Now bring us to your encounter with John Paul II.
So, quick piece of interim content on the way. Graduated with a degree in English and creative writing, which qualified me to buy a minivan, fix it up to live in, and travel around with my pit bull performing poetry and telling stories. So
I don't know this about you.
So I was doing that, and I needed a place to park my van when I was in Atlanta. So I decided they got the most chicks at the cathedral. That's where I should park my van. That's where I should go to Mass. It's at the cathedral. So I would park in the parking lot there with my pit bull, Savannah, and in the morning get up and get out in my shorts and my gallon of water and pour it all over me and get Savannah and take her to the duck pond and let her chase the ducks, which she would not catch the ducks, and then get dressed and go to church. And what do you think I did when I got to church, Christopher? See if you can remember.
Well,
We already talked about it. We repeated it 3 times.
We repeated it 3 times.
Come often.
Come early.
Stay late and
Find a way to serve. Right.
Come often. Come early. Stay late and find a way to serve. After Mass, the Mass that all the singles went to, the choir, the music ensemble would ask for volunteers to carry the microphone stands up to the choir loft after Mass. So I'd go up there and carry microphone stands, make 3 trips, carry microphone stands up to the choir loft, get to know the people in the music ensemble. Eventually, they asked me to go to pizza with them. After Mass, I'm hanging out with the musicians. After Mass, that's a good way to get connected to the church. They told me about the Life in the Spirit seminar. Went to the Life in the Spirit seminar. The sound system was a typical Catholic sound system, which means it was a travesty.
Right.
They needed help. So I went to a pawn shop and I bought a sound system. I started showing up early, setting up the sound system, sticking around late till everything's done to break down the sound system. The Life in the Spirit team prays together after everybody's gone. Carrie Allen starts telling me about her family situation. Carrie ran the Life in the Spirit seminar. She created the Eucharistic Congress that takes place in Atlanta. I think it's the second biggest one in the country. She's a saint. Her husband, Bob, saint. They had just gotten custody of their 4 grandkids, age 1, 3, 5, and 7.
Wow.
People like to tell me about the tragedies in their lives because I'm an easy person to talk to about tragedy.
Yeah.
So she tells me about the tragedy in their lives, tells me about these kids. I go over there and start visiting with these kids. The next thing you know, I'm living with Bob and Carrie and their 1, 3, 5, and 7-year-old, learning parenting from the 2 greatest parents that ever walked the face of the planet. And I'm right there in the middle
Dave.
of this life. And then one of my friends from the cathedral gave me Love and Responsibility, which some of our viewers know is the book that John Paul II wrote before Theology of the Body. I like to call it part 1 or the precursor. Somebody gave me Love and Responsibility, and I read that book, and my heart just cracked open. I said, yes, yes, yes. This is why I'm a man. This is why God made me. This is how God made me.
Awesome.
This is the beauty and the power and the goodness of God's plan for me to be a man. This is how I can be a man in the world. This is how I can learn how to love. I can learn how to be. And the book just struck me so profoundly. And yet I knew the book would not be enough for me because I was still having some, not everybody who starts going to church and trying to do things the right way is 100% successful. When it comes to the application of Catholic principles in our dating lives.
Yes.
So I still had some challenges. I still was hit and miss when it comes to living my dating life. I still needed help. And
if you want to know what Love and Responsibility is, just a little side note, check out the series that Matt Fradd and I did on Love and Responsibility. 3 episodes in this studio and 3 episodes in his studio. Check it out. And Juan, you'll get the link up there, right? So what year do you find Love and Responsibility?
So this would have been like late 90s, like 98.
90, okay. Yeah, late 90s. I first read Love and Responsibility in 94. I first read Theology of the Body in 93, and I knew I had to go to the roots of that. And Love and Responsibility for me, when I first read it, it was like a book-long examination of conscience. He gave me a vocabulary to understand why I had caused myself and other people so much pain in the way I lived my sexuality. It was such an eye-opener and such a utter confirmation. When I first read Theology of the Body, I was like, I'm holding in my hands the answer to the crisis of our times. I can't keep it to myself. When I read Love and Responsibility, it was like the seal on the mission of my life. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to spend the rest of my life sharing these 2 works, Theology of the Body, Love and Responsibility with anyone who will listen.
That's right.
You and I met in
Right
2001.
around 2000, 2001.
So 3 years after you discover Theology of the Body, you came to that conference in Atlanta.
Yeah. So first, I read Love and Responsibility. And for me, this is very personal because I don't know how to live. I don't know how to deal with women. I don't attract women who are making good relationship choices. They're choosing me. We got a problem. Can I tell you what my approach was when I wanted to get a woman to go out with me at the cathedral?
Okay.
I would say if there was a cute gal there at the cathedral, what do you say we get together sometime and go to the grocery store and buy a bunch of melons and put them in my backpack and climb to the top of the light tower at the stadium and drop the melons off the light tower?
That's a great date. Woo!
And there are women at church who will say yes
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah,
And they're not necessarily the best candidates for marriage at that stage of their lives when they're saying yes to that request from me.
Throwing melons off. Okay, I'm with you.
So I got some issues going on, and I get Love and Responsibility. I'm like, I need help. And there was a gala coming up right after I read this book that a friend of mine was hosting, a fundraiser, and I knew I was going to go to it, and I knew the gowns the gals would be wearing there. And I thought, this is going to be tricky at this fundraiser with these gowns. So I said, let's get together before the gala, a group of us, and talk about love and responsibility before we go to the gala.
Beautiful. Yep.
So we're sitting there with the guys in tuxes and the gals in gowns, and we're talking about love and responsibility, and we liked it a lot. And we kept doing it. And it grew.
Brilliant.
And it grew.
Brilliant.
And it grew. And it spread. And it spread. And I started speaking and traveling, telling people this good news about love and responsibility and theology of the body, this extraordinary good news. But more importantly, in Atlanta, I was forming a group of people to help me do it.
Beautiful.
And when you form a group of people like that, when you find a group of people who are doing the thing that speaks to the very core of what your life is about, what do you do, Christopher?
What do you do when you discover that
You come often, you come
early,
you stay late,
and you find how you can
find
serve?
a way to serve.
Yep.
That's what you do.
Yep.
We had a pure love group, we called it, at the cathedral. We had about 30 people on the core team. So we were doing well. That's just the core team. Had about 30 people. Half of them more than half of them wound up married to each other.
Wow.
So this went well. And I put together, I met you, and I saw what you were doing. I said, I like what that guy's doing. That's good stuff. That's really making an impact. I said, I'll be the Christopher West for singles. I put together a dating and courtship program based on theology of the body and love and responsibility. And I started teaching this workshop, this one-day workshop on dating and courtship. So I'm traveling around, and it's going to be about 2 to 1 women at one of these events. So there might be 300, 400, 500, 600 people, and it's going to be mostly women. And I'm not getting married to any of them. I'm staying single. What's going on here? I still had some issues, Christopher.
Yeah.
I was the problem here. There were a lot of women around me at this point in my life that would have been great wives.
Right.
And I'm still hung up like, I need to be with a bikini model. Then I get with the bikini model who's had a conversion, and now she's going to the love and responsibility group. And I'm thinking, well, I should be happy with her, but I'm not, because there's other bikini models out there that are more attractive than mine. And I'm still twisted up. It
takes
hard.
a long time to undo what a pornographic culture has done.
And then I was also dysfunctional when it comes to finances and career and work. I couldn't find my way that way. And so some of the women that were more stable would, maybe go out with me a little bit, and they'd be like, Dave's kind of a mess. I don't think he's the right choice here. So I'm staying single, and then I turned 50, and I said, you know what? I can't keep doing these dating and courtship workshops. I'm not the role model people are looking for.
Wow.
I got to shut this stuff down. So shut down the website, completely turned off the spigot on all of that.
Wow.
Said, I know how to serve the poor. I know how to serve the homeless. There's a lot of people like to do that with me. That's a blast. I love doing it. I love helping other people do it. I'm just going to do that. And so I focused on that and I was just a lonely guy who wanted to be married and couldn't find a wife. And when I was 53 years old, Christina Bohacek from the Carpathian Mountains in Ukraine made her way to the cathedral in Atlanta. And she moved to the United States, and she asked somebody at the cathedral how she could get involved in serving the poor.
Wow.
And he brought her to me. Justin Ryan brought her to me.
And you were married what year?
I knew right off this woman is a catch, and she knew right off that guy is a mess and wanted nothing to do with me.
But you married soon thereafter, right?
It took a year to get her to go out with me. I kept trying. I kept asking. And I knew that she was worth trying again and then trying again. And it's awkward because you don't want to be that weird guy that's,
Yeah.
too pushy.
Right.
That's a tricky thing to do. And I did date some other women in the meantime, so I wasn't, I think, inappropriately putting eggs in a basket they didn't belong in.
Right.
And I think it was very helpful for me winding up married to Christina that I did date other women after I wanted to go out with her and she didn't want to go out with me. It's important to be open to marrying people who actually will marry you.
That is, I think, very important.
This is one of my core principles when it comes to teaching dating and courtship. If you've been trying to get married for a while and it's not working, there's one thing I can promise you. At the core of your situation is that you're not willing to marry any of the people who will marry you. And you're hung up on people who won't marry you. It's not a good situation. So let's pivot a little bit, focus our attention not on the people who won't marry you, focus attention on the people who will marry you, and then on the subset of those who are virtuous, highly virtuous. Let's go for highly virtuous and attractive enough. This is the core principle when it comes to dating and courtship. You're looking for someone who's highly virtuous and attractive enough. What does attractive enough means? It means that you like it when you see them walking towards you. You like the way that you want that person to come sit next to you. They have what I call the basic raw material of attraction necessary. You're not looking for the person that's a 9.5.
Right.
Because what God's going to do later is he's going to take that basic raw material of attraction. What he does for people who are faithfully married, when God gets involved, is he multiplies that attraction.
Yes.
He multiplies it 8 billion times.
Yes.
And you have a supernova of beauty in front of you that you could not have imagined.
Yes.
So to say, I won't marry this woman that might be, the world might say, well, she's a 7 on the attraction scale. I got to have the 9.5. No, what you're after is the 7 billion on the attractive scale that God's going to give you when there's that raw material of attractive enough combined with highly virtuous. And you talked about this earlier today in one of our guests. This guy talks about theology of the body all day long. He talks about it at lunch, when he's hanging out with friends, when you're cruising in the car with him, going somewhere to listen to music. He's talking about this stuff all the time. It's ridiculous. But earlier today, he was talking about that we want to be heading in the same direction, facing God on a journey together toward something that we know and love and share.
Yes.
And there's highly virtuous, on the same mission that I'm on, and attractive enough. That's what I want to encourage anybody who's watching now who wants to get married. Stop pining after the people who won't marry you.
Yes.
Now let's look at the subset of people who are highly virtuous. Highly virtuous. Don't settle for less than that. Not perfect.
Yeah.
They got all kind of flaws. And I'm not talking about people that check certain boxes of virtue. They go to the right liturgy, this, that, and the other. They like this preacher, this priest. I'm talking about people that have charity in their hearts and know how to live it. And they're not perfect, but by golly, they treat the person who parks the cars and serves the tables and cleans the bathrooms, and the pain in the neck person at church, and their family member who's difficult to deal with. They love those people. They're good to those people.
Yes.
Find that person, and there's enough attraction there to build on.
You know what made me fall in love with Wendy? I knew I would be absolutely crazy ever to let this woman out of my life. I mean, if she wanted to leave, I'd have to let her leave. But you know what I mean by the saying. When I saw how much she loved her great-grandmother. Wendy was 22. Her great-grandmother was 105.
Right.
And I went to New Jersey to visit Wendy. And the first thing she wanted to do with me, I want to take you to meet my great-grandmother. And we walked through this nursing home. This is 1995. We walked through this nursing home, and I hadn't been in a nursing home since my great-grandmother died in 1976. And this was not like super wealthy nursing home. This is kind of bottom of the barrel nursing home. It smells bad. You can tell people have been sitting in their own urine for a long time. And I'm walking in and I'm immediately like uptight and uncomfortable. And I'm walking through the hallway like, this is an uncomfortable environment for me. Wendy was so at ease. She stopped at each wheelchair. How are you doing today? It's Wendy. Remember me? I'm like, she knows these people. She's not afraid of these people. Like I'm all uptight. And we go into her great-grandmother's room. And she had told me her great-grandmother was blind and very hearing impaired, and she gets a little nervous when strangers come. So she said, just sit there and I won't even be able to introduce you to her, but just be with me as I be with her. So I was just sitting there, just being with her as she was being with her. And Wendy pulled out her guitar, and first she was so attentive to her, and how you doing, and can I get you anything, and taking care of her and putting a blanket around her legs. And then she pulled out her guitar and she started singing to her great-grandmother. And I'm thinking, what kind of 22-year-old girl moves to New Jersey after she graduates from college to live with her grandparents, who are also, this is the daughter of the great-grandmother. She's living with her grandmother and her grandfather, who are in need of care.
Right.
But now, when she's not caring for her grandmother and grandfather, she goes to visit her grandmother's mother, who's 105. And I'm just seeing this love as Wendy was singing this song to her great-grandmother. I was like, I have never seen such love flow out of a young woman's heart. And something in my heart knew how desperate I was for genuine love. And I knew Wendy had genuine love. The world teaches you to choose a list of qualities in a person. And this is language I learned from Love and Responsibility, from JP2's book. If you just fall in love with a list of qualities of someone, well, you can find those same qualities in any number of other people. Mm-hmm. And you'll always find them to a higher degree. That's right. But if you fall in love with a person, the person is unrepeatable. There's no other Wendy in the world. And this idea of, you were talking about the raw material that's required to have something that will mature into a love that can last. JP2 says in Love and Responsibility that your love needs to be, when you get married, your love needs to be mature enough to continue maturing. I was 26, Wendy was 23 when we married, and I was so immature in so many ways as I look back at that almost 30 years ago. But we were mature enough to continue maturing. That's worth spending your life building. And I was right. I was absolutely right that Wendy's love was going to be a healing balm in my life. And it was going to call me on my crap. And it was going to help me become more and more the man I'm meant to be. You marrying in your 50s have a very interesting perspective, because you spent so many years as a single man. Marry later in life. I'm 6 or 7 years younger than you. I'm now having grandkids almost at the time you're having your kids. Tell us about that as a man in your 60s who has young children.
I will, but I want to say something about you and Wendy first,
okay.
if I may.
Sure.
So I watch you do what you do. And what you do is mind-bogglingly amazing. And I see you do what you do, and you do it at depth, and you do it day after day. And I wonder, how can somebody who does that tie his own shoes? How can somebody who creates and delivers what you bring to the world even function well enough to make it through the world.
I ask myself that question.
But then I meet Wendy,
How do
and
I
I
function?
understand it's because you have
Yes,
Wendy.
it is. It is.
Wendy is
You're
the answer to
absolutely
that
right.
riddle.
You are absolutely right, Dave.
She puts together what's left after of the shambles. After you give everything and there's nothing left, then you get to come home to Wendy, and she gets to restore you to
You are
being
exactly
a person
correct.
who can make it through this world.
You're exactly
And
correct.
I want to say something else about you, and then we'll give Wendy credit for this too. I've been around, I've had a nice life. I've done a lot of wonderful things in the church. I've been around a lot of amazing people. It's been just, I have entree into the lives of the most wonderful, holy, faithful, passionate, committed, brilliant exponents of our faith and practitioners of our faith. But a lot of those people struggle when it comes to being a person and doing person things. They may deliver a brilliant message. They may write a brilliant message. They may preach a brilliant message. They may lead a wonderful religious order. They may do wonderful stuff. But that doesn't mean that they're getting through unscathed when it comes to all the slings and arrows the enemy aims at people who are sharing the faith.
Yeah.
And what I tell people about you when people ask me about what I'm doing in this work with you since we've come together in the way that we're working together, I'll tell people first and foremost with Christopher, what you see is what you get. He is the man who's living the life that is driven by the principles that he's teaching and sharing. And it's something that I'm so deeply appreciative of.
Thank you, brother.
Just being with you, being a part of your life is way better than being a part of this mission. And I'm ecstatic about being a part of the mission. But for the people that don't get to hang out and see behind the scenes and know what it's like to be around the Christopher who's away from the microphones and the crowds and the people, the Christopher that's at lunch with friends and with coworkers just a couple of hours ago, and we're giving Wendy credit for that. We're letting her have all the credit.
Absolutely. And I will sum up what I am trying to live, what I'm trying to teach, and what I'm trying to live as follows. And this was something I learned from my spiritual director who has saved my life in countless ways. But I used to think I had to have my SHIT together to do this work. And it was basically, hey, everybody, look at my TOB muscles. You want to be as strong as I am as a TOB guy? Check out these guns. And then the Lord, in his mercy, says Christopher needs to be humbled because he's pointing more at his own muscles than he is at me. And I've had some falls in my life that have humbled me. And when you're going through those falls and you feel your own weakness and you feel your own hypocrisy, I've had many times where I've said, I'm done. Lord, if you chose me to do this work, you chose the wrong dude. I'm done. And I've had on many occasions a fantasy of just being a UPS driver because my fantasy here, and I'm sure a UPS driver would tell me it's a lot more complex than this, but just give me my fantasy for a moment. My fantasy is with the UPS driver, who they get paid pretty well. They just drive around all day, drop off boxes, and then they can go home and not have to think about it. That's my fantasy anyway. I have a job, which I don't consider a job. It's a life, right? It's a way I live my life that I am devoted to living this vision. But here's the vision that I'm devoted to. And it took these humblings for me to realize this is the vision. And when I said to my spiritual director, this was maybe 15 years ago, I said, I think I'm done. I can't do this work anymore. And this was after a 6-month sabbatical where I needed to really look more at my priorities and look at my brokenness and open it up because I had these falls in my life that shook me. And I told my spiritual director, I thought he was going to agree with me. I thought he was going to agree with me because this man knows all of my SHIT. He knows it all. And I thought he was going to, that's good self-knowledge, Christopher. You're right. You're not the right person to do this work. I said, Father, I'm done. I don't think I can do this anymore because I've seen how broken I am. I've seen it. So I think I'm just going to quietly withdraw and be done with it. And he said, Christopher, you got it all wrong. You think a saint is somebody who has his shit together. He said, no. A saint is somebody who has all of his or her SHIT open to the merciful love of the Father. And that was one of those, like, whoa, you just turned my, it was one of those game changers, one of those paradigm shifting moments. And he said, your broken, dysfunctional, sinful humanity is only an obstacle to you doing this work if you keep it buried, if you pretend it's not there. But if you keep all of that manure open to the merciful love of the Father, that very manure becomes the fertilizer that in which the Lord plants a beautiful field and bears a harvest. So what I'm trying to teach the world through the gift of John Paul II's Theology of the Body and the work we do here at the Institute and in collaboration now with the St. John Paul II Legacy Foundation is to help other people know that they're loved in their real humanity. One of my favorite lines in the Catechism is when the Catechism says, prayer is where we let our masks fall and present ourselves to the Lord as we are, so that he can love us as we are. And in that offering and in receiving that love as we are, we become purified and transformed. For years I had, and there's still the leftover tendencies that you always need to expose to the light and overcome and be transformed more thoroughly. But there was a pattern in my life for a number of years where I was just trying to prove that I was lovable because I had discovered this great teaching and I figured out how to live it. And, oh, did you really? Did you really figure out how to live it? It was, and you've heard my story enough. The major wake-up call for me came when I was offered this very lucrative book deal from the biggest publishing house in the world in New York City. They wanted me to write a book for husbands called Loving Her Rightly. And I was so excited to tell Wendy all about it. We had been married 10 years at this point. And when I told her the title, a book for husbands called Loving Her Rightly, and I saw how her face fell, and she had the courage to tell me, you are in no place to be writing a book for husbands called Loving Her Rightly. That was the beginning of a deeper conversion in my life where I have been coming to learn that my poverty opened to the Lord allows his riches to flow to others. That's what we're trying to live. That's what we're trying to teach. That's what we're trying to share with others. And yeah, that's the legacy of JP2, that we are loved in our real humanity. I want to share with everybody that we offered you when the Theology of the Body the Theology of the Body Institute was started in 2004. We approached you because I was thinking of who would I want to work with in this mission? Who would I want to be alongside me? And I thought of you. And you'll remember well, we brought you up to Philadelphia, we interviewed you, and we offered you the job in 2004 to be the director, the original director of the TOB Institute. And you had accepted the job, and then tell our viewers what happened.
Well, this was my dream job, what I loved more than anything else. And my dad was in a nursing home in Atlanta, and there was no way to figure it out that it made sense to move him to Pennsylvania or for me to leave him alone. So I had to turn down my dream job. And for a long time, God, why? Yeah. Why did you let this happen? Meanwhile, God was teaching me what I needed to know in order to do what we're doing now.
Yeah. And God was teaching me what I needed to know so that we could do what we're doing now. And I couldn't be more excited, Dave, that you went on that journey in fidelity to the Lord, in fidelity to your love of your Father, in fidelity to charity, what charity demanded. You gave up what was at the time your dream job out of love for your father. That fidelity has brought us now 20 years later to the point where we turn to you when we received what we thought was an inspiration that we need, and this is how it was born, and I'll just share this for our viewers' sake. You, of course, know the story, but we had the sense that, and it was really I'm getting older. Jason Clark, my right-hand partner in this ministry, we're both 55, and
Young whippersnappers.
and I've been doing it for 30 years, and God willing, if I can do it till I'm 85, that gives me another 30 years. So for the sake of simple math, let's just say I'm at the halfway point of what I might be able to pour out. God willing, who knows, I could get hit by a truck tomorrow. But I want to do this, God willing, to my dying breath, share this beautiful vision with the world. Well, being at the halfway mark of that arc really made me think, gosh, we need to start now ensuring that the first generation, and I'm not just speaking here of the TOB Institute, but the TOB Institute is one example of the first generation of spiritual children of JP2, right? Where people about our age have come together, grabbed this message. We're raised with JP2. He was the Pope of our childhood, young adulthood, into adulthood, right? He was our Pope. That's all we knew. And we were shaped and formed by JP2. And that first generation is now middle-aged people who have started all kinds of ministries to spread his teaching. I could rattle off a dozen of them right now, of people in my same situation who have given their lives to spread JP2's teaching. Well, what about when we die? That's not too far off. How do we ensure that this goes to the next generation and the next generation? And I think of like the people who in the day of St. Thomas Aquinas were his first disciples, who saw this man is gifted. And this is a gift not just for us here who've studied under him and learned from him, but this is for the whole church. How do we pass this to the next generation and the next generation so that here we are 800 years later and Thomas Aquinas's theological gifts is part of the fabric of the way the church understands itself. We who have studied at the feet of JP2 and been the first generation to receive what he gave, we believe this is for the whole church for centuries to come. How do we ensure that happens? We need to make sure that this gets to the next generation so that that generation can take it to the next generation and the next generation so that, God willing, not 800 years from now, but maybe 100 years from now or 150 years from now, this becomes more and more part of the fabric of the way the church understands itself. We are not there yet. The seed has been given. JP2 has given it, but we are not there where this is part of the fabric of the way the church understands itself. That's why we started the St. John Paul II Legacy Foundation. And reconnecting with you when you were the first person I thought of. When I was like, who's the man to run this?
I remember where I was when you called me to talk about it.
Yeah, tell me.
I was walking across the street in Newton, Georgia, with a good friend of mine, guy that gave me this beautiful bracelet here, and you called. And I answered the phone, and we started talking. Started a journey.
Yeah.
That led to where we are now, which is launching.
We are launching. Share the vision.
So, the Theology of the Body Institute operates primarily on funds provided by the people who attend the courses, people who purchase books, and other resources, and not by fundraising.
Right.
So what we talked about is creating this new foundation, the St. John Paul II Legacy Foundation, which is focused on raising money to provide these resources to everybody, everywhere, regardless of their ability to pay.
Yes.
So that's what I'm here for. That's my background. I have a background in fundraising, but I also have a deep immersion in John Paul II's personalism, which means that we recognize this mutual interpenetration of the gift. where the giving becomes receiving, the receiving becomes giving. We come together as partners, as collaborators, as family, and this allows us to grow the mission in a way that previously would never have been possible.
Right. And we at the TOB Institute, we're kind of sister organizations, the foundation and the institute. We also have a vision, the board does, on the foundation, not just to fund scholarships and resources from the institute, but broader than that, we want to reach other organizations who have dedicated themselves to spreading John Paul II's legacy and funding them as well to do the work that they do. We will be, the Institute, through scholarships from the foundation, will be one of the main beneficiaries of the foundation's work, but it's broader than that as well.
And it's exciting that we were just able to make arrangements today to make the first disbursement of funds from the foundation to the Institute to provide many scholarships.
Yes.
I'm not sure exactly how we'll calculate it, maybe 40 scholarships.
Yeah, it's in that neighborhood.
Attendees at immersion courses.
Yeah.
Like Christopher said, we will also be supporting other organizations, and another primary purpose of the foundation is to help fund the creation of new content which brings the theology of the body to everybody. So we couldn't be more excited to be at this place of launching this new foundation, of going into this new year, 2025, with the opportunity to create new resources, make resources available to everybody. We want this great news out there at scale.
Amen. Amen. One of our first goals, which I will hold out to all of you, our faithful viewers, we need to raise, I want to remember how we did this math, enough money to provide 1,000 scholarships to our online courses. Now, the retail value of that is about $900 per course. So the Theology of the Body Institute is putting up half that money. We're going to put up $450,000 to allow 1,000 people to take our online Theology of the Body Level 1 course. The foundation is raising another $450,000 to meet that and enable 1,000 people to take our Theology of the Body immersion course. If you feel led to contribute to this campaign, please click the link in the description below to be part of this. You'll learn more about the work that we're doing at the foundation. Also learn more about the work that we're doing here at the Institute by clicking the link TOB for free. We will send you 3 free sessions to that online TOB1 course so you can taste it for yourself. What is this course that they're trying to raise scholarship money to get people around the world to participate in? Click the link TOB for free and we'll send you 3 free sessions.
And if you want to reach me, you can find me at the foundation website.
The link for the foundation will also be in the description below, but just announce it because it's easy to remember.
It's jp2legacy.org. So you can also find me there. Reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. Love to get to know you. And can I mention one more thing that the foundation is doing?
Yes.
We are also going to fund the creation of some new content that we're very excited about. Christopher will be recording in the Atlanta area on February 22nd. And from this one-day presentation, it's basically a crash course in Theology of the Body, an all-day course. We'll have 8 30-minute videos that we're creating for people who aren't ready yet for an immersion course to have a way to dive in, to learn, to really bite off a good-sized chunk, and then hopefully draw them in deeper and further.
And that's going to be distributed at scale globally, God willing, in multiple languages as well. So that is very exciting. Dave, when I think back at the disappointment both you and I felt 20 years ago when we offered you the job at the TOB Institute, and I remember just, okay, Lord, got to trust. And I think where we are 20 years later and how the Lord prepared you in those 20 years, got you involved in Catholic fundraising in other organizations so that you could then bring the skills to what we're doing. It's just one of those, I see the hand of God on this. And filling in some of the blanks of your story today just makes me love you all the more, brother. And I thank you. I thank you. When you were in that place of abject poverty, and you said the light was almost dimming to the point of being extinguished, that you cried out. I thank God that you had the grace to cry out. It reminds me of my own cry out to the Lord when I was 18 years old, and how somehow your cry and my cry to the Lord is connected. And our poverty opened to the Lord, our manure opened up to the Lord, is something the Lord is using to plant his vineyard. It's just crazy how he does it. But I'm so happy to be in this with you, my brother.
I couldn't be more grateful. You have entrusted me twice now with a major role in your life and in your work. This time I have the opportunity to actually
do
say
it.
yes
Yeah.
and do it. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to all of you who have already given to our Legacy Foundation. And thank you to all of you who are praying about doing that now. God bless you.
God bless you all.